You matched with someone on a Tuesday. By Thursday, you're checking their profile between meetings. By Saturday, you're thinking about them in the shower, already imagining what this could become. You've had maybe 3 conversations. You don't actually know them yet, and some part of you knows that, but you cannot slow it down. That's not excitement. That's a system running a program it learned a long time ago. Fast attachment isn't a personality quirk, and it's not evidence that you finally found the right person. It's a documented psychological pattern with identifiable causes, measurable neurological activity, and a direct line back to experiences you had before you were old enough to choose your own clothes. Understanding why fast attachment happens doesn't make it stop immediately, but it does mean you can stop blaming yourself for something your nervous system was wired to do. Here's what's actually happening in your brain when you attach fast. Helen Fisher, a biological anthropologist who conducted fMRI studies on romantic love in the early 2000s, found that early-stage attraction activates the same reward circuitry as addiction. The ventral tegmental area, the brain's dopamine production center, lights up when you're around someone new you're drawn to. Dopamine drives reward-seeking behavior. The same pathway that makes gambling compulsive is the one making you check your phone every 12 minutes waiting for their response. Fisher described romantic love as one of the most addictive experiences a human being can have. That's not just a metaphor, but brain imaging data. And then there's oxytocin. Studies cited by the National Institutes of Health show that oxytocin levels increase significantly during physical touch and intimacy, even in early stages of a relationship. Oxytocin accelerates trust. It accelerates bonding. Your brain is not waiting for you to decide this person is trustworthy before it starts treating them like they are. The chemistry moves faster than your judgment does. So, the attachment you feel after a few good conversations and one night together isn't irrational. It's chemical. The question is, why some people's systems escalate so much faster and so much harder than others? That answer starts in childhood. John Bowlby spent the better part of the 1950s through the 1970s developing attachment theory, the framework that explains how early caregiver relationships shape the way we form emotional bonds for the rest of our lives. Mary Ainsworth built on that work in the 1970s and identified distinct attachment styles through direct observation of infants. One of those styles, anxious attachment, is the pattern most strongly linked to fast emotional escalation in adult relationships. Anxious attachment develops through inconsistent caregiving. A caregiver who is warm sometimes and unavailable other times, present then absent, responsive then distant. The child's nervous system cannot establish a reliable prediction about whether their needs will be met. So, it does the only logical thing it can do. It escalates. It reaches harder. It attaches faster before the connection has a chance to disappear. Carry that into adulthood, and the trigger changes, but the response doesn't. Research published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology across multiple studies in the 2000s and 2010s found that individuals with anxious attachment report both higher emotional dependency and faster perceived closeness in romantic relationships. They're not imagining a deeper connection than exists. Their nervous system is genuinely registering closeness at an accelerated rate. The attachment feels real because neurologically, for them, it is. Around 20% of adults carry an anxious attachment pattern, according to meta-analysis data cited by the American Psychological Association. That's 1 in 5 people sitting across from someone on a first date, already feeling things they can't explain and can't slow down. But anxious attachment isn't the only driver. Behavioral psychology identifies a mechanism called intermittent reinforcement, the same framework B.F. Skinner used to explain gambling behavior. When attention and affection are inconsistent, the brain doesn't respond by pulling back. It responds by intensifying its pursuit. Uncertainty doesn't reduce attraction. Research in social psychology has demonstrated the opposite. Uncertainty increases it. An unpredictable connection feels more magnetic than a stable one because your brain is now problem-solving, chasing resolution, working to close a loop that keeps reopening. Dating apps have industrialized this mechanism. instant availability followed by sudden silence, a match that messages constantly and then vanishes. Intermittent validation at scale, cycling through faster than any previous generation has experienced. There's also what researchers call idealization bias. In the early stages of attraction, the brain actively fills in missing information with positive assumptions. You don't know this person well enough to have an accurate picture of them. So, your brain builds one using the best available data, the way they laughed, the thing they said that surprised you, and projects forward. You're not attaching to who they are. You're attaching to who your brain has decided they probably are. That projection feels indistinguishable from real knowing. It isn't. Scarcity thinking compounds all of this. The belief that genuine connection is rare, that people who actually get you don't come along often, causes new relationships to be overvalued before they've been tested. Every promising conversation becomes evidence that this might be the one. Every good date carries the weight of everything you've been waiting for. The stakes get inflated before anything has been established, and inflated stakes accelerate attachment. Social psychology research summarized by Harvard University has found that people can form strong emotional impressions within minutes to hours of meeting someone. The brain is extraordinarily fast at building attachment scaffolding. It doesn't wait for evidence. It builds first and updates later, if it updates at all. What makes fast attachment so disorienting is that it feels like clarity. It feels like finally recognizing something true. And sometimes there is genuine compatibility underneath it. Researchers, including Amir Levine and Rachel Heller, who have written extensively on adult attachment, are careful to note that fast attachment isn't always a trauma response. Strong compatibility signals can produce rapid bonding in people without anxious attachment histories. The problem isn't the speed itself. The problem is when the speed outpaces reality. When the intensity of what you feel is being driven not by who this person actually is, but by a nervous system running an old program in a new situation. The checking, the constant texting, the way a delayed response feels like a verdict, those aren't character flaws. Communication studies in romantic relationships from the 2010s found that people with anxious attachment text more frequently and are more likely to interpret response delays as rejection. The pattern is consistent enough that researchers can predict it. Your nervous system learned that slow responses meant something was wrong. It was right once. It keeps applying that lesson everywhere. None of this is permanent. Current research and clinical practice both focus on the capacity to rewire attachment patterns through therapy, emotional regulation work, and the accumulated experience of relationships that don't follow the old script. The nervous system that learned to escalate can learn to pace itself. It takes longer than reading about it. It takes longer than recognizing the pattern. But the pattern isn't you. It's what was built into you before you had any say in the construction. The person you attached to after 3 conversations might turn out to be exactly who your brain decided they were. They might not. That part you can't control. What you can start to understand is why your system made the call so fast, and whether the emergency your brain is responding to is actually happening, or whether it's running a memory of an emergency that ended years ago,